Sauron, the ultimate evil, a corrupted power of malice and greed with the will to dominate all. Sauron's beginnings were similar to that of Gandalf and Saruman, a Maiar created by Iluvatar and in the service of the Valar. But under the Dark Lord Morgoth, Sauron fell to the persuasions of evil, and would later rise to take Morgoth's place as the second Dark Lord. Though Sauron would be defeated for good in the Third Age, he proved to be a formidable foe, with powers of necromancy, shape-shifting, manipulation, and fire. This build is going to use a fair amount of mods, and some of them are quite powerful. I highly recommend playing this build on higher difficulty levels, perhaps even with a mod or two installed to increase enemy difficulty, such as Deadlier Honor mode. The mods used in this build are Anti-Paladin Class mod by Soifu, Lord of the Rings Villain Weapons by Roseprey, Mantis's Face Preset Collection 1 by Eclipse, Nazif's Godlike Armor by Bayo Nora, Revenant by Archangel 820, The One Ring by Roseprey, The Phoenix Bearer, and yes, that's misspelled, by Inquisitor Mendoza, Vampire God by Lord President, and Werewolf Background by Lost Soul Man. Alright, after a very long time of trying to get this build together and make it make sense, we are finally here. So let's get started. The race is going to be half-elf. And hold on, put down your pitchforks. We were originally going to go with elf, because Sauron often disguised himself as one. However, the half-elf race opens up the sub-race of Revenant, which is a lot more fitting. You're going to see that in a moment here. Here it is, Revenant. So the spell here is Death's Quarry. 1 to 10 damage, mark a creature as your quarry to deal that additional damage whenever you hit it with a weapon attack. And then we've got the sub-race features, and I think this is where it comes together. You've got Savage Attacks, so when you land a critical attack with a melee weapon, you deal an extra dice of damage. Undying Resolved, if you reach 0 hit points, you regain 1 hit point instead of becoming downed. Superior Dark Vision, seeing up to 24 meters. Relentless Nature, at the beginning of your turn, your Relentless Nature heals you 1 hit point. And Longevity, you are immune to poison damage and can't be poisoned or affected by disease thanks to the curse put upon you. So I think what we have here is just more appropriate to the build than what you get from a regular elf. Alright, the starting class is also going to be from a mod, and that is Anti-Paladin. And fortunately with Anti-Paladin, you actually get some pretty sweet looking armor to start with, so if you are having trouble finding other choices within the game that fit the bill aesthetically, this isn't too bad to start with. So with Anti-Paladin, here's your starting actions and class features. Runeblade binds the equipped weapon as your Runeblade. Release Runeblade unbinds the equipped Runeblade and returns all runes. And Death Grip pulls the target towards the Anti-Paladin. Then the class feature, Empowered Runeblade, increases attack roll of attacks made with your Runeblade. Do not worry about this being an issue with using a mace. It is not. I've already tested it. Alright, the subclass is going to be the Dreadnought. The spell is False Life. You guys should be familiar with that one by now. And then the subclass feature is Unbreakable Will, reduces the damage of an incoming attack by 1d10 plus con modifier. For the background, this is also coming from a mod. You're going to want to choose Trickster Hedonist. Trickster Hedonist background is going to unlock access to the vampire. And the reason that we want access to vampire is that is one of the forms that Sauron would take as a shapeshifter. Please note that we are also using the werewolf background mod, and that you will get access to once you load into the game. There will be a potion for it, so don't forget to take that. Werewolf was another form that Sauron took. Alright, so Trickster Hedonist gives you Stealth, Perception, Deception, and Sleight of Hand. For the stat points, we are going to go with the +2 in strength, and we are going to bring it up to 19. Yes, you heard that right, 19. The mods allow you to go beyond 17 for skill points. Dex is going to be at 10, Constitution is going to be at 15, Intelligence 10, Wisdom 10, and Charisma is going to get the +1 and go up to 15. Now, I realize that if we were doing the perfect build, all of these scores should be relatively high, but we do still have limitations even though the mods allow scores to go above 17. So we're going to put the biggest punch into strength, but we're also going to keep the con and charisma high because he was not easy to take down and his charisma was actually very good. He was very manipulative and persuasive. For the skill proficiencies, in addition to the ones that we already get, of course, we are going to go with Insight and Intimidation. All right, that will do it for the basics, so let's move on to the appearance. So starting out, we're going to go to body type 2. We'll keep it on male. As far as the voice goes, none of them really fit, so just choose whichever one you want, I guess. For the face, we are going to be using a mod again. That's the Mantis mod, and you should see an option under here for Aaron, this one here. Scrolling down, we're going to change the skin color to Pallid Tone 1, just make them look a little bit paler there. For whatever reason, this mod face defaults to have the tattoo on the face, so just remember to go under body art and just say no tattoo. For the eye color, we are going to go with Elf Gold 3, give it that fiery appearance. For the makeup, we're going to go with Style 2, get some shadows around the eyes. We're going to keep the color black, but we're going to turn the intensity down to just about 50%. For the hair, the style we want is Pinned and Perfect. The color is going to be White 1. Now, the reason that we are making him look like this is because this is based on Sauron's the Fair One form, or Anatar, which he would disguise himself as when he was interacting with the elves. And if you have played Shadow of Mordor and or Shadow of War, you would have seen him in this form during some of the flashbacks in the cutscenes. With that out of the way, let's move on to the build section. At level 2, we're going to stay in Anti-Paladin, and there's nothing we need to do here, but we unlock quite a few things that are probably going to be unfamiliar to most of you, so let's go over them real quick here. We unlock Rune of Tenacity. Your rune blade ignores damage resistance and deals your strength modifier in damage on a missed attack. Fell Strike strikes an enemy with 2d8 necrotic energy channeled through your rune blade. Rising Hatred gains a stacking 1d4 damage bonus each time you're damaged until the end of your turn. And Bone Armor. Surround yourself with the bones of your enemies, returning damage to attackers. Level 3, staying in Anti-Paladin, we unlock Rune of Blood. Regains hit points on hitting a foe with your rune blade. Intimidate strikes fear into nearby enemies, reducing their strength by 3. And Dark Purpose, gain 2 damage reduction from physical damage, but reduce AC by 1. At level 4, couple more unlocks, and we'll choose our first feat. Rune of Death adds necrotic damage to your rune blade. Rune of Haste allows another attack as a bonus action after landing an attack with your rune blade. Rune of Hatred infuses targets you attack with lingering hatred that explodes for necrotic damage after 1 turn. For the first feat, I personally am going to go with Heavily Armored because he does not have that proficiency already with this build. However, if you do not care about using heavy armor, then you can choose something else here. So this will even out the strength score to 20 and give the heavy armor proficiency. At level 5, we are still an Anti-Paladin and unlock some more fun stuff. Extra attack, of course. Unholy Might infuses you with unholy power, increasing your strength by 3. Darkness, that one you guys are probably familiar with. Armor of Undeath, wreath yourself in necrotic energy, reducing incoming non-radiant magic damage by 2, but becoming vulnerable to radiant damage. And Overpower, focuses your might into an overpowering melee attack, dealing 3d8 force damage and knocking the target back. Level 6, nothing we need to do here, but more unlocks. Unleashed Runeblade adds half of your anti-paladin class level to the damage of attacks with your Runeblade. Brutality, your savagery intimidates nearby enemies when you kill or critically strike an enemy in melee. And Seethe, the fire of your hatred burns away slow, poison, and disease effects. Level 7, just one unlock here, Dark Purpose. Gain half your Constitution modifier as damage reduction from all sources, but reduce AC by 3. Level 8 is going to be our last level in Anti-Paladin. We unlock Unstoppable Force. You cannot be restrained, paralyzed, frightened, or knocked prone. And we take our second feat, which is going to be an ASI. And this will allow us to even out our Con and our Charisma scores. Now at level 9, it is time for us to multi-class into the other modded class we grabbed, which is Phoenix Bearer, and is spelled correctly here. For Phoenix Bearer, we start with Produce Flame and Phoenix Fire Minor. The minor flames of the Phoenix deals 1 to 10 fire damage, and the caster will be 1 to 10 hit points. So fire damage to everyone else, heal to yourself. And class feature is Protection of the Phoenix. When the Phoenix Bearer is hit with a melee attack, the attacker starts burning for 3 turns. Also gain 3 fire damage reduction. Okay, and then we need to choose one spell. And we're going to go with Hellish Rebuke, get a little more fire damage in there. Level 10, the Phoenix Imbue Weapon cantrip is unlocked, which provides an additional 2 to 8 fire damage to your weapon attacks. You choose a battle stance. We are going to go with Defense. The others just aren't really appropriate for the build. And then time to choose that third feat. And we are going to go with another ASI, and this time we're putting 2 into Con. At level 11, you unlock a cantrip that you may not find yourself using as it's not relevant to the build, but it's there if you want it, Conjure Azure. And for our spell choice, we're going to go with Misty Step. For one, it's just a good functional spell, and for another, we know that Sauron could teleport to a certain extent when in a ethereal or misty form. And for the final level, we unlock Phoenix Holy Flames, gain resistance to fire damage and weakness to cold damage. And we've got a couple more things to do here. We need to choose another spell. Keeping on with the theme of fire, we're going to go with Heat Metal. But if you're not a fan of that, you could also go for Flaming Sphere, Flame Blade, or Burning Hands. For battle tactic, we're going to go with Horde Breaker. Any of these really would be on theme, but when I think of Sauron, I connect most with Horde Breaker, probably because of that scene in the film where he's just basically tossing people aside like they're puppets. And then one more feat to round out the build, and you guessed it, we're doing another ASI, and we are bumping up that Con all the way to 20. And that will do it for the build, so it's time to go on to the bonus section. As mentioned in a few other builds, there's a mod for the One Ring. So if you'd like to roleplay as Sauron when he was in possession of the ring, you have that option. There's also a mod called Lord of the Rings Villain Weapons that will get you access to Sauron's mace. And if you would like the most aesthetically appropriate and badass looking armor that you can possibly get in this game, then you'll want to use Nazif's godlike armor. Rather than spend more time on equipment, when you first start looking at this character's abilities, it can be a bit overwhelming. There's a lot going on. So let's take a quick peek, because so far we haven't even touched on the vampire and werewolf abilities. So from the vampire, you have Vampire Bite. Suck the blood from a living creature to regain hit points. The target takes 14 to 24 piercing damage, but not if it's sleeping or if you're hiding. You also get Vampire Bat Form. Pretty self-explanatory. Shape change to wolf. Actually works pretty on theme with Sauron. You get Necromancy of Thay, which allows you to summon a group of gaunt-faced zombies. And you get Gaseous Form. Transform yourself or an ally into a tiny gas cloud. Can't fall, fits through small openings, very hard to damage. And you also have Shapeshift. So very on theme for Sauron's character. And then for the werewolf abilities, you have Create a Werewolf, so you can actually turn targets into werewolves. Shape change into a werewolf. You can summon a wolf companion, and then you can also remove the werewolf powers if you want to. Quick correction, I think Wolf Companion is actually from the vampire class, not the werewolf class, even though it would make more sense for the werewolf class. So let's show off a couple of these. This is Death Grip. So bringing the target into melee range. All right, this time let's show Overpower. Pretty cool effect there. Before you get off the ship, don't forget to go to the chest here in the side room with the Mind Flayer pod so that you can get your Nazif armor. If needed for some reason, if the potion didn't show up right away, you can grab the werewolf background potion here as well. And you can also grab the One Ring here. So let's take a look at these items. Here's the One Ring. Provides Master Ring, grants the wielder the power to dominate others' wills and be able to turn invisible. Corrupting Burden, the One Ring still answers the call of its master. As such, the wearer suffers disadvantage on saving throws. That doesn't really work for a Sauron build, but it's not that big of a deal. He's already OP as shit. And Wraithwalker, while obscured, the wearer has advantage on stealth checks. Then you also get the Greater Invisibility spell, the Dominate Personal spell, and the Dominate Beast spell. All right, now let's put on the Nazif armor and take a look at that. Now this armor is bonkers powerful, but I think out of all the armor I have seen available in game, this looks the closest to Sauron armor. So maybe you don't want to use this right away, maybe you wait until later in the game. It's up to you. So here's the helmet. Advanced Awareness has advantage on all saving throws. Curse of Thurs, you are considered proficient with this armor while wearing it. And it gives a spell called Fear Me. And here's the plate. Steelforged Anatomy, you get, and you're not misreading that, 557 hit points. You can't be affected by criticals, and you get godlike constitution. It's bonkers. Attackers can't land critical hits on the wearer. Gauntlets, beyond God strength. Your unarmed attacks deal an additional 5,700 force damage, and you get godlike strength. And you get something called Devastation Throw. The boots, unstoppable. You cannot be forcibly moved by a foe's spells or actions. Negate fall damage and ignore the effects of difficult terrain. So yeah, this armor is basically making you invincible, which is kind of on theme for Sauron. All right, let's show off a couple more things here. All right, let's take a look at the bat form. Took a moment, but there we are. We're a little bat now with only 1 HP. And it looks like we got a bite attack and a dash action. Let's see how the bone armor looks. Okay, so essentially it's just the look of the spell going off, but then you don't see anything additional on top of your character. Let's bind our weapon as our rune blade so we unlock those abilities. There we go, now it's our pact weapon. Let's activate Rune of Hatred. And Rune of Death. Alright, let's go ahead and do a regular attack. Alright, so if we look at the combat log, we can see 16 slashing damage, 3 piercing damage, and 5 necrotic damage. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get into a fight with the more difficult guys over here, and we're going to pretty much leave Lysel and this guy alone just so we can show off more of Sauron fighting. And just a note, this is on honor mode right now. Alright, so we've turned into a werewolf. We're gonna dash. We don't care about provoking attacks of opportunity. We just want to get over here to where the big ones are. But that did trigger our Rising Hatred. Alright, let's get out of this mode so we can try out more abilities and attacks. Let's use Fell Strike. Oof! That was a big hit. And we get another attack, so let's do Overpower. Another really big hit there. This time we're going to try Fear Me, and this comes from the armor. Friends and foes in area drop everything and grovel and become fearful. So let's see if it works. There we go. Now they are groveling and he has dropped the weapon. Now we're going to try Devastation Throw and see how it looks when we throw something really big. Because remember, we've got Beyond God strength, so we're going to grab this guy and we're going to try to toss him. Woo! And that did so much damage, he died on impact. Let's do Death Scoring. And then we'll do Lacerate. We're going to use Death Rush to get to this enemy over here. We'll do the Phoenix Fire Miner here. Just see how that looks. It left him with 1 hit point, so we'll just finish him off with regular attack. Now we're going to try Horde Breaker, since they're standing right next to each other. Nice. Now we're going to do Intimidate. And since the Vampire Bite was lagging earlier, let's try that again. There we go. And let's see that Overpower again. That was fun. Let's try Armor of Undeath. Let's take a look at how it looks when we just shape change into a wolf versus a werewolf. There we go. We basically look like a dire wolf, because we're huge. There is an Inciting Howl, so that would work if we still had allies that were alive. So we'll just do the bite. Let's see if creating a werewolf works on these guys. Doesn't look like it worked. We'll do the Phoenix Imbue weapon. And then a regular attack. And let's see what happens with Shapeshift. What options we have. Looks like these are the same options as we would have if we had gotten this spell through the normal means. We do not actually need healing, but let's just do it since this is a different healing ability than what we normally get. Alright, let's try to get up close and personal here. And we're going to do Fell Strike again. Alright, I feel like we showed off a fair amount of those abilities, so I think we'll call that for the bonus section. A tough build to put together, which is why it took so long to get it out to begin with. And we really appreciate your patience as we were working on this. But if you did enjoy this build, and we certainly hope you did, I bet you'd also like some other Lord of the Rings builds we've done as well.